Our scripture reading this morning is a reading from Exodus chapter 17, verses 1 through 7. Water from the rock. From the wilderness of Sin, the whole congregation of the Israelites journeyed by stages as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do for this people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile and go. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock and water will come out of it so that the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massah and Meribah because the Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" May God bless the reading and hearing of the word.
I was really struck by the ending of this passage this week. It's not even really the point of the passage. But is the Lord with us or not? It's a heavy question right now. Is the Lord among us or not? There is a way to approach your relationship with God, the one we talked about last week, or I talk about a lot, a utilitarian, transactional understanding of our relationship with God that easily concludes that if life is hard and difficult right now in this moment, it must mean that God is not with us. Because our relationship with God is based on blessings and constant, a direct response to specific requests, right? And if those requests aren't met immediately, then we must have been abandoned. If you have a utilitarian understanding of us and God, then, as Nietzsche said, God's not listening anymore. I don't share that philosophy, of course, but I get it. I can understand it. Look around the world right now and wonder, is the Lord among us or not? I mean, we've been walking, talking, thinking human beings for like 300,000 years now, and this is the world that we have made. We're still doing this to each other. I get it. So this question comes days, maybe weeks, maybe after God has already provided manna in the desert and more quail for the Israelites than they could even carry in their baskets. But they come to this place and they don't have anything to drink, and immediately it's, where is God in our lives now again? This is how Zora Neale Hurston told this story in Moses, Man of the Mountain. So when they camped at Rephidim, several days' march closer to Sinai, they found that there was no water there. The committee did not wait on Moses, respectively. They rushed up to him with threatening gestures and told him, "Give us some water to drink, man. We ain't for no foolishness today." One time it's nasty water that not even a hog would drink. Then we ain't got nothing to eat, and now we ain't got no water at all. What kind of leader are you anyhow, Moses? Moses said calmly, "You ain't talking to me, you know. It wasn't my idea to bring you out of Egypt. Your God commanded me to do it. Go talk to him. But I'm telling you, your attitude is a temptation to God to punish you." But nevertheless, Moses went on and talked with God. He said to him, "Do you see these people of yours would just as soon stone me as not? What must I do about it?" And then Moses saw an inner vision of a strong stream of clear water surging inside a cliff on the hillside. So he called the committee to him, the Back to Egypt committee, and touched the cliffside with his rod, and the fountain of water gushed forth. And while the people and the cattle drank, Moses called Joshua to him and told him, "Get me a stone and mark it with a new name for this place. We done had such a big fuss here that the name of the place got to be something that fits the case. From now on, the name of this place is Massah, which means one big fuss." It's interesting that Moses names this place Test and Quarrel in Hebrew. Massah and Meribah, Test and Quarrel. It's named a big fuss after the people's doubt, not after God's response. Water from the rock in Hebrew is a better sounding name. God provides is a better sounding name. But Moses names this place Test and Quarrel, whine and moan, so that the Israelites remember not God's provision for them with water from the rock, but the way they moaned and grumbled about it. This tag to this story, the name of this place, is setting this story up as a discourse against utilitarian, transactional theology. A theology that only asks, what has God given us? The utilitarian theology of the Israelites. It says, since our direct, physical, material requests are not being met, God must not be listening. Moses named this place Bitch and Moan, so that they would never forget it. So, the Exodus is another one of those big threes of our Hebrew Bible, of our Old Testament. The covenant with Abraham, the exile of the Assyrians and the Babylonians, and then the Exodus in the middle there. And the Exodus is by far the biggest, by far the most important, and the most defining of the Hebrew faith and of our Old Testament faith. Exodus still defines the Jewish faith and shapes our understanding of God, of who God is and what God does, and our relationship with God. It's still the biggest thing out of our Old Testament. So let me ruin it for you real quick. So this is a map of the traditional route of the Exodus. That's the Sinai Peninsula down there. That's northeastern Africa and the Nile River down the left-hand side. So they crossed the sea pretty early in Exodus. The Egyptians still had still had enough time to catch up to them, right? And then, what did they cross? They crossed the Red Sea, right? That's what it says. It's not what it says. The Red Sea is way down here. Why in the world would anyone escape Egypt, go straight south, a whole country's worth, cross this big sea, and then go straight up through a desert? In Hebrew, the Red Sea is Sea of Reeds. So the King James Version, and going all the way back to the first Greek and Latin testaments of the Hebrew Bible have traditionally translated that into the Red Sea. But the words are the Sea of Reeds, which makes sense to me because up here in the Nile Delta, when the Nile runs into the Mediterranean Sea, there is miles and miles of marshland. Not that any of this actually matters to the story, but I think that Moses left Egypt and dried up a marshland for the Israelites to walk through. And then in the Sea of Reeds, which we don't know where it is because nothing is still called the Sea of Reeds. And then when the Egyptians chased them into this marshland, it became grass. It became filled with water again. So modern scholarship pretty much agrees that the Exodus did not go all the way down into the triangle of the Sinai Peninsula. It was one of these marshy wetlands that dried up for the crossing of the Israelites. And then when the Egyptians got there, it was a boot-sucking mire and muck that anybody who has stepped into a natural body of water in the Midwest of the United States of America knows immediately that you'll get stuck in there. In a soft-bottom lake or soft-bottom creek or crick, as my grandpa would say, that the water came back in and the Egyptians got stuck. I don't think that actually takes anything away from the story. I like putting history and geography that we know together with the biblical stories. I think they went that way, up and across. So the Exodus defines God as deliverer. That the main thing, the primary activity of God is deliverance, is liberation, is freedom from bondage. God goes back to it anytime the Israelites need a reminder. Remember when I brought you out of the land of Egypt. Remember when I brought you out of this foreign invasion or this attempted invasion or this attempted occupation. Remember when I delivered you from the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Cushites and all the other ites in the Hebrew Bible. Remember when I did that and have faith in me. The faith of the Old Testament is built upon God's deliverance. But here's the thing, people are impatient. We don't get a lot of timestamps through the story of the Exodus, but these folks have been on the road for less than a year. The Exodus, they actually leave Egypt in chapter 12, and they have already passed the Sea of Reeds, and Moses and Miriam have sung a hymn of praise, and we have 2 months, we know it's 2 months after they have crossed the Sea of Reeds, according to the text, that God provides manna in the desert and more quail than they can carry. And this is several months after that. God has just turned rancid water into clear, potable water. God has just made tortillas out of dew and brought these magical birds out of the bushes. And immediately these people we're thirsty again. Where is God? My wife and I are about to spend 12 hours back and forth in a car with a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. We're thirsty, Moses. We got to go to the bathroom, Moses. We just stopped to go to the bathroom. I didn't need to go then, Moses. I need to go now. Methuselah isn't sharing. I don't know. We're thirsty again. They've immediately forgotten. If you were a hip young person in 1986, then you remember that when Janet Jackson gave the gift to the world called "What Have You Done For Me Lately?" Listen to these words. Used to go to dinner almost every night, danced until I thought I'd lose my breath, Now it seems your dancing feet are always on my couch. Good thing I cook, or else we'd starve to death. Ain't that a shame? What have you done for me lately? Miss Jackson, of course, had a point. But the phrase took a trajectory of its own, like phrases usually do, and now it's a sarcastic response to that means the opposite of what you're asking, right? It's a sardonic cliche that says the opposite of what have you done for me lately? Like throughout the Exodus, this foundational, definitive story of God's faithful deliverance and provision, that the Israelites whine and grumble and cry, why has God abandoned us? And Moses says, God created bread out of nothing yesterday. Yeah, well, what have you done for me lately? I'm thirsty right now. Human beings are impatient. And people are bad at perspective. Everything feels like the most urgent thing in the world. Everything feels like we're the only ones who have ever faced anything like what we're going through in the history of the world. Everything is a crisis because we're the main characters of our own stories. Everything is a crisis, and if we are thirsty now and there is no water now, it doesn't matter that there was water yesterday. God has obviously forgotten us. If our immediate individual material or physical needs are not currently and perpetually being met, all of a sudden it's, what have you done for me lately? These people said, why did you lead us out of Egypt just to die in the desert? Instead of, it's better to die as free Israelites than enslaved in Egypt. At one point they said, at least Egypt gave us cucumbers. Cucumbers was on their list. The wilderness got to a point where the people thought it was better to be enslaved with cucumbers than free with unleavened bread. One of the points, I think, of the Exodus. It's going to get worse before it gets better. It is going to get worse before it gets better. Recovery has to go through withdrawals first. The cure for cancer makes you sick to death. Women don't leave abusive relationships because there's nothing on the outside of it for them, but the unknown. Getting your knees back after surgery means physical therapy, and physical therapy sucks. Just because something is promised to be better doesn't mean it's going to be any easier. Healing can feel like hell, and we don't talk about it enough. Healing is hard. Deliverance is scary. Flying feels like falling until you can get your wings under you. The journey from enslavement to Egypt, in Egypt to freedom in the land God promises, leads through plagues and death and drowning and wandering and hunger and thirst and more wandering and golden idols and more wandering. The journey from enslavement to sin and selfishness and greed into the freedom and the grace of God in Jesus Christ leads through a cross. The everlasting life offered in Jesus Christ requires death to happen. It's going to get worse before it gets better. All the stuff, all the shit we're in right now, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it's going to get better. God doesn't mention the grumbling of the Israelites. God doesn't mention the potential stoning of Moses. God just brings water from the rock. Even after all of this, even after just giving them clean water out of poisoned water, even after just providing manna and quail in the desert, then they whine again and they grumble against God again. Even after all of that, God still brings water from the rock. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but it's going to get better. So one of our foundational experiences of God is God as deliverer. What we're being delivered from may change, but God is ultimate and divine deliverer. Through anointed leaders like Moses and Miriam and Aaron, the movement of God is from bondage to freedom, always. From sin to sanctification, always. From darkness to light, from emptiness to fullness, from brokenness to wholeness, always, every time. But there are no promises, there are no guarantees that movement itself will be easy. Only that it'll be worth it. Only that it'll be better on the other side. And here's the thing. Moses never stepped foot in the promised land. Ultimately, this wilderness experience, this wilderness wandering, this movement from enslavement to freedom to liberation, from scarcity to abundance, it's not just about us. It's not about the individual traveler's experience. We are called as followers of Jesus Christ to do work whose results we may never see. We are called to do work we may never finish. We are called on a journey we may never complete. I'll say it again. Moses never stepped foot in the promised land. Being a follower of Jesus Christ is not about maximizing individual returns on a personal investment of time, of devotion, of good behavior, the ultimate payout being a ticket into heaven. Being a follower of Jesus Christ means creating a community of transforming and transformed individuals, transforming the world in that movement from brokenness to wholeness, from enslavement and bondage to liberation and salvation. That means in ourselves, that means through our churches, that means for our communities, and that means maybe an end that we may never actually see. Go and do likewise. Amen.